So thanks for giving me a second chance to interview you and kind of talk about some things that have been on my mind and that I'm really curious about, and I feel like you'd be a great person to ask and see, just feel it out what's happening in corporate America. I know what you do because we work together, but for our audience, please tell them your position and what you do for the company.
Okay. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here, and I thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
I am an executive vice president and the head of corporate banking for Banesco USA, which is basically part of a $100 billion group with presence in 15 countries.
Wow.
What I generally do is I run production for the United States portion of it. So what does that mean? Commercial loans to businesses, construction loans, residential, private banking. Those are all different units of our bank that are on the production side that deal with the customers and the day-to-day, trials and tribulations that we all deal with in certain industries. In sales, it's no different. I'm basically the head of the units as it relates to sale and the generation of revenue for the bank.
So we can say that you work in sales.
Yes. Yes, I consider myself to be a salesperson.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the reason why I wanted to bring you on the show, because I wanted to ask you how sales is being impacted by AI. And I've worked in sales my whole life, so I always see the human condition, that has to take place between sales. It's about the relationships. It's how you build rapport, how you create need, demands for your product that you're selling. And I wonder how AI is going to play into this. So before we get there, I want to ask you, what is the most challenging part of your job right now? So you're not out in the field per se closing deals, but you're overseeing the team that is out there closing deals.
That's probably the best way of putting it, while at the same time, I am there for support. If they need anything, if they require anything. But mine is more of a strategic position as far as depending on where our board and our executive management want to take the bank. I'm part of that process of decision making when it relates to how we're going to do it and what's the best way to do it in relation to who our bank is, how we're positioned in this market, and really what are we trying to get out of this. To me, Katie, sales is in everything that we do. We're selling every day. We're selling with our spouses, with our family members. You go to the doctor, you go to the dentist, you do the things that you normally don't think about. And one side or the other is always selling. Why? Because sales to me is an experience, a journey. And if it's a positive one, then all of a sudden you feel, hey, you know what? This is something that makes sense for me. There's very few products out there that sell themselves. And once they do, usually you get more competition, right?
Yeah.
So what is it that's going to set you apart from that? And that, to me, always comes down to sales and always comes down to really the people that you have in the organization, which are the ones that not only develop a culture, but also take that culture and develop a perception in the market of what you do and the way you do it in.
So what would you say in your role right now is the most challenging aspect for you right now?
I'm going to tell you probably it's a little bit of a generic answer, which I'm sure you've heard. Every industry that I touch or that I have been familiarized with seems that the scarcity of talent is something that we're all battling. I can tell you in my specific field, especially down here in South Florida, we do not have the amount of college graduates or just interest from the next generation coming into banking as maybe they did 30, 35 years ago when I started. I think a lot has to do with government regulation, and that has turned off, I think, a lot of people when they say, is this something that I really want to do? Because what I do and what the bank does, there's alternative sources that can be done, in private, smaller companies that can provide some of the same type of financing without all the red tape, without all the bureaucracy. So it's something that, when I look to see, how do we keep our bank moving in the way that it should be and progressing in the manner that it should be, it always comes down to people. You're as good as the people that you have. Finding those people, having them be the type of person or professional that you want is a challenge. But even harder than that is keeping them. And that's something that I think we all battle in every industry because of the competition. And because, let's be honest, the thinking has changed as far as the American worker. You don't have people in companies for 20, 25, 30, 35 years retiring. That does not exist. It hasn't existed for a while. So the perception is one of, okay, what are you going to do for me today? What are you going to do for me now? And I think that perception is not only on the management side as we bring people in, but I think also prospective employees also feel that, hey, it's as good as my last quarter, it's as good as my last year, and so forth. So to me, it's a fluid situation that you handle on a daily basis, but there's no end to it. It's something that's consistently ongoing, and you have to have a very good pulse on that.
With that being said, if finding good talent is such an obstacle, how does AI play into this? So we talked a little bit before we came on air about how you're looking at AI as a positive thing, as bringing in, not replacing jobs, but just, enhancing the experience and making it easier, more efficient. Can AI help in creating a better talent pool or finding a better talent pool, or maybe filling in certain tasks that have to be done that you no longer have to search for such talent in order to fulfill those tasks?
I think it's more the latter. There's certain things that AI can do, let's say in recruitment, depending on, what are the characteristics or components of what you're looking for, We obviously deal with open positions, and as our bank has continued to grow, so have the amount of opportunities. But I have to tell you that as far as it identifying and being a source of help or support on how we bring in the right people, I really still think that that's more of a human touch, more of a human component, because a resume and paper will hold whatever you want to put on it.
Right.
And when I sit with a person, what I always try to look for is, do you want a job or do you want a career? If you want a job, I got some, but not in my area. If you want a career, if you have a plan, if you're motivated, if you want to do something, be something, those are the things that I constantly look for. Education obviously is important, experience is important, but we all come from very different social, economical, and some of us political backgrounds, right? So down here in South Florida, which is such a melting pot of people from different places, one of the things I've always looked for is, well, as you were going to school or as you were, working and developing throughout your career, what were some of the things that you had to encounter? What are the things that made you say, wow, the effort that I'm putting here, overwhelming sometimes with the amount of things around us, because as you know, we have a lot of people out there that are still, in school, that have families, that have kids, or they're continuing their education, depending on whatever it is or whatever field that they're in. So it's something that I always look to see, how did you get here? What was your motivation? Did you have to work 40 hours while you went to school? Did you have to work 2 jobs? What is it that really can set you apart? And to me, it's always been work ethic. We can teach a lot of things. I cannot teach motivation, and I cannot teach work ethic.
Self-motivation and work ethic. And you figure that out in asking the questions of how they have basically disciplined themselves in other things like going to school or keeping up with a family and doing all of that. And that's kind of like the clue.
Yeah. Now, I think that when we talk about how AI could help in something like that, I think when you look at the different positions that we have, the different positions that we interview different candidates for, there's a lot of good data that comes from that can later be utilized, sort of like an algorithm, I guess, if you were looking at it in a manner of what is it that we're looking for, and what are the components and what are the triggers to make us identify these things. That's where I could see AI more on the back, trying to support that. But when we have that information and we say, okay, we got 30 resumes, we want to move forward with these 5, really what's going to make the difference is this: when we sit down, when we talk about your past, when we talk about why you want a career with our institution or with any institution, and what do you want to get out of it. That's when we can really start to ascertain, is this a person that fits within our culture? Because lots of times it's not about the best person, it's about the right person.
How is AI being integrated, or if AI is being integrated in the sales process at Banesco?
We started this a little bit, I want to say over a year ago, when we really started talking about AI and the fact that it's going to change the world.
Of course.
Okay? And it's still in its infancy. So where it goes and to what degree, that remains to be seen.
Sure.
But what you can't do is sit. What you can't do is wait. What you can't do is be reactionary. So when we started looking at AI and saying, what's the best benefit for our company? The first thing we did was we included the employees in the process. In other words, every area got their own little survey and said, hey, how would you like to utilize AI to make your job more efficient, more productive, whatever would make you better at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
And to me, we've measured it by anything and everything we do has to affect the customer experience in a positive manner. If it doesn't, then we sort of have to go ahead and halt what we're doing, because that's the one thing that we can never compromise.
Right.
So we're extremely careful about making sure that our employees are part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we got that information back, we started working several different projects. As it relates to the production side, there are ways of utilizing AI, which we have started. As we move forward, I think is going to help us in things like prospecting.
Okay.
Let's say you're looking for a certain type of industry that you'd like to bank, or maybe there's a certain market or territory within South Florida that you want to go ahead and say, hey, you know what? This is a market that we have the products and financial services to meet their demand. That is how I see AI on a day-to-day basis in helping us identify opportunities. Now, we're at the preliminary stages of that.
Sure.
There's nothing that we've put out there. But on the production side, when I've sat with the units, it's how can we make this more beneficial to you? How can we make this something that makes you better at your job? And I think that it's important to do that, because if not, there's perceptions that are not true. AI, as far as at least in our organization, it's not about eliminating jobs. It's not how we can do more with less people. It's quite the contrary. It's how can we help and benefit our employees and our staff to be as efficient and productive as they can.
Yeah.
Because when you do that, you not only feel better about what you're doing, because there's nothing more frustrating than working and not being able to move because there seems to be obstacles and challenges at every part of the process.
Yeah.
When you can reduce it significantly, it makes the experience for the employee a lot better, which, as you know, correlates directly into the corporate culture of the company.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, the hardest thing is trying to, with all the way that AI is just moving like wildfire, like really fast and in so many different areas of personal and work life, what aspect of the human is it that AI cannot replace that is valuable in sales?
That's a very good question. I think there's a balance between both. But when you have a problem, when you have an issue, when you need to be guided, when you need to be advised, AI can't do that. They can go ahead and maybe obtain data that are going to give you information that can go ahead and help you in what you're trying to accomplish. But when you're sitting down and you're trying to resolve something, or you're trying to see if there's a solution to something, this is still number one, because at the end of the day, we're human beings. I look at it sort of like, if you look at what's happening in the medical field, every doctor that I have, every doctor that I deal with has a portal. There's no more phone number.
Oh, yeah.
There's no calling in to see if, hey, I need something. No, you put in the portal what you need, and the response and the information that you get is like this. Mm-hmm. Whether it be appointments, medication, prescriptions, name it. It's become extremely easy and comfortable. We all have it on our phones. But if there's a problem, if there's a result, if there's a question that may be sensitive in nature, that's something that AI will never be able to make a human being feel comfortable the way that we maybe can feel comfortable with how we're talking and how we're discussing this. And I take that and I correlate that into basically what happens in our industry. We can figure out ways where any product or financial service we have, let's take loans for example, construction loans, loans to businesses, residential loans. You can go in to a web page, fill in what it is that you need to do, wait for a response, sort of like a Rocket Mortgage type of a scenario where you don't have to go to the bank. You can go ahead and do that. But if something gets stuck, if something is not black or white, if something requires a further explanation, that's something that only can be really, really accomplished if you have communication. If you have one person talking to another, especially on what we do on the commercial side of financing, there's no way that you can just say, go ahead and fill in an application and it's going to cover everything. There's always going to be loose ends that require questions, that require sitting down, that require guiding a customer, a company. And a lot of them want that because it's not about the information at hand that you give them, it's what are you going to do with it? How is that going to correlate into the success that maybe that company or individual is looking for? There's a human touch that we're always going to require and need. To what degree? That's the question that we're still trying to answer as we move forward. I look at it as a tool that can help me in the decision making, but as far as sitting down and let's say trying to win a deal because you're competing with 2 or 3 different institutions, or trying to keep a company that maybe you've banked for X amount of time from leading to a competitor, there's nothing but human interaction that is going to help you probably resolve those things. You're not going to be able to leave it to AI and say, I'm giving you such an elaborate response based on the information that you gave me that you're not going to have any questions. We all have questions, and I strongly believe that there's still a really, really strong sentiment from people out there that you want the efficiency, you want to be able to move fast, but at the same time, if you need to ask a question or you're not sure of something, you just need to be guided or advised. Human beings can't be replaced for that.
So I wonder if is it the questions or is it the emotional support and connection that's needed for the fulfillment of the deal, for the feeling good about it, for the executing on it, right? People are very emotionally driven, and a lot of the things that move them are moved by their emotions. So they sometimes pick a deal based on what feels right to them, right? Also, what makes sense, asking the right questions, making sure they have everything that they need, everything is squared away in terms of, deliverables and logistics and all of that. But aside from that, it also has to feel good to them. And I don't know if I agree necessarily on that AI won't be able to replace answering the questions, because just to give you an example, the other day I had a really complex question. I mean, really detailed question. And I said, let me just ask ChatGPT for it, just for fun. And I started asking, and I kept going, and I went down the rabbit hole of explicit details on exactly what I needed to find out. And I got so much more than I needed that it was insane. I don't know that I could have gotten those answers as quickly at any time on demand and as detailed without saying, hey, let me find out and I'll call you back. Or, let me think about it. No. I got it exactly how I wanted it. I got definitions for the terms I was looking for. I got how these terms benefit me, the pros and cons, how I can choose between one or the other. If I choose this one, what's the outcome? If I choose this one, what's the outcome? Is there a short-term benefit, long-term benefit? I got all that information that I feel, if, let's just say AI or ChatGPT is correct, oh my gosh, I don't know how a human can get to that level of immediate, on-demand knowledge base in a written format to a client as quickly as AI can do it. I mean, that was insane.
I agree with you in the fact that obtaining the information and getting the results of whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. I would never compare a human being to AI to be able to do that. That'd be ridiculous. But when you grab that information and you sit down with a person, a company, a set of managers, they want to talk about specific experiences in the market, specific experiences that maybe the institution has had, specific experiences on things that have maybe delayed or gotten them in trouble in the past that ChatGPT won't be able to give you. And I'll give you an example. So if I want to go ahead and build an office building here in Doral, okay? I mean, we know the components that we need. We know the information that's requested. And we know the process that we're going to utilize. But it could be that that product maybe doesn't match the market as well as it should based on a return of investment, for an example, okay? And when you sit with people that are in this specific market dealing with things that are so tangible and so realistic to them at the end of the day, you could give them information that can be generated obviously by AI, but how you deliver that message and how you use that to sell are completely two different things.
Sure.
Most people that I deal with till today still want to know, who am I doing business with? That's an extremely important part of what we do, because they want to know, well, is your bank, do they have a lot of experience in this industry? Can you tell me about some of the projects that you've done? Tell me about some of the hiccups that you've had and how you've gone out of them. Can you compare that to anything within the local market or tri-county area that could give us an example of that? Those are things that are so specific and detailed to people's personalized experiences. AI won't be able to capture that. And even if it did, it's not about giving you a response. It's, how am I going to give you that response? How's my delivery going to be? Am I coming across genuine? Am I coming across like I have actual solutions to what you're doing? Or am I trying to push a product? That is something that a human being in the delivery and the way they go about things that will set one company apart from the other.
So I got a couple of things of how AI cannot replace a human. First, you mentioned the process of sales, like sales is everywhere, and you have to create the demand. And I don't know if necessarily AI can create that demand as a human would in a conversation with a person, right? So I think it falls in the psyche. Again, going back to what AI can't replace is the psyche of the human being in having that spark of demand, like feeling the need to have to want to buy that. And then aside from that is, why would they want to buy from AI versus a human? And you're saying it's aside from, like getting into the nitty gritty of very specific situations that concern them that AI might not be able to answer at this time. But aside from that, it's the emotional connection, that the relationship that is being built. So maybe what AI can't replace is the relationship and the way a person feels with that, right? I'm not sure that AI can bring an emotional feeling out of a person.
I would agree very strongly with that.
And that's necessary.
That's absolutely necessary, and pretty much a lot of the things that we do. When you go into Starbucks, you know what you're getting, right? Doesn't anybody just needs to take your order. The product sells itself. When you're talking about financing, you're talking about financial services, the information obviously is extremely important. How AI, which I look at as a complement, okay, not a replacement to, how are you going to make sure that your customer base is benefiting from that, right? A lot of it can only really be done as far as getting the message and the point across, once again, by what we're doing. So if you're telling me, hey, Nelson, I want to bring my business to you, but I'm happy where I'm at, but I've got all these other banks knocking on my door and saying, I can give it to you for cheaper, I can make it more efficient. Our online services are much friendlier, easier to use and navigate through. There's a multitude of things. Things don't always work out as we would like them to, right? There's always little hiccups throughout the day.
Sure.
When those little hiccups occur, you want to make sure that if you need somebody and you call that your call is answered. You want to make sure that someone can sit and explain to you the why of what you're asking.
Right.
And that advisory or that guidance is something that has to be genuine, in my opinion, when you sit down. Because if I'm not, you're just going to say, well, Nelson, you're like the other two institutions. I get it, but no. One thing that we always were taught to utilize, and especially I learned a lot of this back, 15 years ago in the Great Recession. When things are good, everybody's your friend. When things are bad is when you truly realize who your partner is, what support they're going to give you, and if everything they told you leading up to that was true or was just sales jargon. Yeah. We always say that one of the benefits of banking with us is you're going to know who the decision makers are. You're going to get to meet them personally. You're going to be able to pick up the phone if you have a problem and call somebody at the highest levels. That is so important in our industry because when things don't work out the way that they should, you want to make sure that you have a partner that's going to be able to support you. And the only way, I guess, of really at least having an indication, because you never really know, Katie, until it happens, right? Yeah. Is throughout my process, throughout my journey with a customer, did the customer feel that I was not only smart, that I was not only intuitive about what is it that they needed, but did they also feel like, well, you know what, Nelson was genuine in his responses. And sometimes genuine is saying no. What we always try to strive for is that we have an open door of communication and we're willing to sit and discuss things at any point in time. Sometimes that can't be done at all levels, especially with bigger banks and bigger institutions. It's a little bit tougher because of size. Based on the size that we have, it's really become a benefit to not only us, institutions that are at our size too, that you're able to sit down with Katie. You're able to see, okay, how'd you start your company? How'd you get here? What motivated you? Why are you sitting in front of me today? Is it you're looking for a bigger location? Are you looking for a line of credit to support existing or future contracts that you have? What is it? And it sort of becomes an interview of the individual before it becomes an interview of the facts or any type of supporting information and documentation that you're going to give somebody. You can explain to somebody why you can't do something, and then they're going to sit and tell you, well, that's what everybody else is telling me. Yeah. That's why I'm here, because I want to hear from you if there's anything different, if there's any other option. Is there anything, or do you fall in line with everybody else? Sometimes we do, right? Sometimes it's hard to decipher that. But when an individual is talking to another one and is taking the time to learn not only about their company, but also their employees, their family, those are the things that we really, really pride ourselves in. Because at the end of the day, the company is the company, right? Yeah. But there's an individual behind it. Yeah. And that for the most part is never going to change. Now, we do deal with public corporations and so forth. That's a little bit different. It's a little bit different of an animal as it relates to that. That one could be looked at as more, hey, just give me the information, tell me what it is, and I'll let you know if I'm going to do it or not, But when we're dealing with small business owners, small real estate investors, small developers, they want to make sure that they have that ability to communicate, to be heard, and at the same time feel comfortable enough that the person that they're dealing with is somebody that can help guide them through the process. And the number one reason we lose business is because of people. Not because of anything in the back room. It's because of people. The customer needs to feel that they're important, that they're being attended to, and that when they need something or they need to speak to somebody, that they're there. That has died down throughout the years. We don't have the traffic we used to have, coming into our branches. iPhones and technology has completely changed that. But there'll always be a reason why somebody needs to talk to somebody, because things don't work out or run smoothly. They just don't. It's a complicated world we live in, and you just want to make sure that when you do run into that you have a partner that will listen.
I agree with you 100%. I think the human connection, the way that humans connect, AI cannot connect to the human being at that level. And I think if everything was to get replaced by AI, the negative impact it can have on a person's well-being because of the lack of connection is severe. And even in business, where you don't necessarily associate connections or relationships. You see more of this connection in friends and family. But in work, it's just as important because people are working most of their lives. They're working 40, 50 hours a week. If you don't have a certain level of connection, everything is just being replaced by AI. You will lose a sense of happiness, joy, peace, and I think that incorporating AI in a way that can help facilitate and nurture those relationships even further instead of replacing them is going to be key. And thinking about it at an even larger scale, talking about the good and the bad, when things are good, everybody gets along, but when things are bad, people start running away or might not show up in crisis. I'm thinking about, and my heart has been with the fires in LA this whole week.
Terrible.
And all I'm thinking about, at first it was the safety of everyone and the animals that are there, but after that it's who's showing up, right? Who is showing up during the bad times now to help figure out how how we can resolve this and what is going on, of why these fires can't be tamed and contained. And it's building that trust with the person you're working with, or your citizens or your community, to know that they have your back. When things get tough, they have your back. It's not only when it's good, but when it's bad, we can take care of it and we'll be there for you. And I think that is what you're trying to say, that you do, not in Banesco, but also you personally. That's how your philosophy is. So
I'll give
awesome.
you a perfect example to your comment. So yesterday I'm watching the news, the fires, right? Hard to comprehend, especially for where we live.
Yeah.
And see that it doesn't matter at what economic level, social level you're at, right? All types of people are being affected. Whether you are a multimillionaire, billionaire, or you're a person that works paycheck to paycheck, your home is your home.
Yeah.
Right? And there's an emotional attachment to that as human beings we all share. So I'm watching the news, and all of a sudden I see this lady crying, running, because she sees the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, next to this huge big black truck on the phone. And I'll make it short because I don't want to take most of our time for this, but AI is going to probably help and assist in some manner, whether it be now in the future, on how do we stop this? What are the things that we're seeing that are leading to this? What are the factors that maybe we're not aware of, right?
Yeah.
And that information, like everything else we've talked about today, you're going to generate that, right? But once you have that information, how are you going to communicate that to your audience?
Yeah.
So this lady was asking, what is it that you're doing for us? This is terrible. We've lost everything. There's no water supply. What is it that you're doing? And Governor Newsom came out and say, we're working behind the scenes. We're doing everything we can with every local agency to try to put a stop to this. But the only reason he was sort of able to calm her down a little bit was because she asked him, can you please tell me before you leave? Can you please tell me? And he was like, well, here I am trying to call the president. I'm showing you. Well, can I stay here? Can I listen to make sure that you do talk to him? Somebody has to listen to us. Somebody has to help us. And whatever information we're going to compile and generate and later utilize in the future, that's great. But for that time being, with this individual, and pretty much every individual where they're needed, was just to understand and comprehend the situation, but to realize that there are people that cared. Yeah. There were people that were there to help them. There were people that were there to say, hey, you know what? I realize what you're going through. Yeah. And that could not have been done if we didn't have a person on the other end that could sort of put them at ease as much as they possibly could and said, not a problem, you stay here. I will let you know.
So to wrap it up, everything that you said, I agree with wholeheartedly. And let's see, I'm excited to see what AI is going to bring, and for prevention, and also to help on the support ends of what we can do as human beings to support one another.
Yeah, it'll be definitely here. Very interesting, and I do not in any way, please interpret that I have the solutions to this.
No, at all.
But what I think we do have is a general understanding of how we could utilize this, for the best for everybody.
100%.
And how we can utilize this to hopefully stop these wildfires or anything else out there.
Yeah.
But I believe strongly that there's always going to be some sort of room for human touch, for somebody just to be able to sit and talk and look at you and say, hey, I understand, I get it, it's going to be okay. At the end of the day, we're still human beings.
Yeah. Thank you, Nelson. Thank you for showing up today, and I appreciate everything that you shared with us
It's my
today.
pleasure. Thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you.